Yo, we are back with another draft here. This time we're going to be covering the game between KCorp, a new favorite coming into the LEC, and Fnatic. So I'm gonna jump right into it because this is a different take on the way the drafts have been going for LEC. We've been seeing a couple of priorities. There's some champions that they're always going to be good because they meet all the requirements of what a good champion wants in terms of being able to be blinded, right? I think it's going to be a big carryover from last year in terms of blindable AD carries that have a lot of pressure into every matchup, which are being banned, and Rumble. So these are champions that can kind of just do it all and neutralize every matchup. And the more that you're able to push back your important picks and kind of hedge against every single composition and every single matchup possible, the more strong these champions are going to be. The main thing we notice here with this draft is that KCorp had a really good draft, but then they kind of cooked a little too hard. I don't know, you're gonna see it here when they get to the later stages of this draft, but they tried to be really creative, but I almost think they were overthinking the way that the draft should have went. So with the way their bans went, KCorp basically, at least my guess here, is that the way that drafting works in the current patch is that blue side will eventually just get to pick their priority pick, and it's on red side to just remove the things that they just cannot deal with no matter what, under any circumstance. So it does seem to be like there's a lot of really strong picks for blue right now, because you're essentially going to guarantee a really strong matchup on blue side, and then you can kind of just follow up from there. And there's a lot of champions that are very blindable right now as well. And in any meta where there's a lot of really good blinds, it's going to be very hard for red side to get true counters on the board. And that's kind of what we saw in this case. So with Varus, Ashe, and Poppy ban, it basically signaled to Fnatic that they wanted to go for the Kalista opener, so they actually ended up banning it. But the reality of it was potentially for the Lucian opener in this case. And the main two combos that Lucian will have in this meta will be with Milio and with Nami, just in case of the burst. But I honestly think, I'm not sure if teams have been trying it very much. I don't think he would be that bad just as a potential B1, and then just seeing where it goes from there. Because I actually think that he's still pretty viable with both engaged champions and enchanters. So I don't think it's a big deal. Even Lucian solo lane doesn't have that bad of a win rate right now. And teams will not hesitate to gravitate towards that if it's even possible that it's viable. So that's something to keep in mind. What I do want to put attention to here is that Fnatic actually end up trying to they opt into this dynamic where they end up trying to force the Lucian pairing, which is really weird because for the R1, R2, they go for 8th Milio, which is not by any means a bad bot lane, but Fnatic essentially sign up for this bot lane and they choose the dynamic that KCorp are going for. So they get Lucian Nami, which is not by any means a bad thing, but Fnatic have basically shelled themselves into a Milio composition. And there could be compositions in which Fnatic actually could have gotten punished here, I would say. Because true engage, Milio still has, even though he's a peel-based support, he has weaknesses to some certain engage champions that have true engage that he cannot cleanse. And if he's the one getting CC'd, it's also really hard for him to cleanse. So you honestly could have went with like Lucian Alistar or Lucian Nautilus as well, but they decided to opt for the Nami, which is more well-rounded. In addition, it's just like, there's a certain way where this draft is going to be set up for Fnatic, in which case it's most likely just going to be a front-to-back comp. And KCorp can kind of take that information and they have an exposed weakness on that bottom side. And it's on them to actually just get as much as they want in this case. So Fnatic is playing a very responsive draft here. It's not proactive at all. They're just responding to the opener they were given, as they should in a sense, because draft is all about countering what your opponent's trying to do and picking the optimal slots, while picking things that your opponent cannot counter. That's the idea behind it. So the 8th Milio is a response solution. And then KCorp gets to take another champion mid and define that dynamic as well. Azir is a very good beneficiary of the 14.1 patch, and then I'm pretty sure he's one of the stronger picks at the moment. He's sitting at like a 51, 52 win rate at the time of recording. Pretty solid. And Fnatic respond again with the Akali. So on paper, Fnatic get like okay matchups on mid, and then their bot lane matchup is They tried their best to neutralize Uchinami. There's not much you can do about that. What I'm surprised about here is that Fnatic actually opt to choke the jungle pool instead of top. Because, like I mentioned, the main thing you want to prevent here at this point is a blindable top laner from KCorp. Because your bot lane doesn't really have much resources to be played through at this moment. And if KCorp pick a blindable top laner, it's going to be really hard for Fnatic to really do anything on the map here. And you can kind of see that here, where they choke out Graves and Lee Sin. And they actually go for Xin Zhao, which is a great pick, don't get me wrong, on R4. But the lack of jungle bans, the lack of top lane bans, allows them to just get this free Jax, right? And then this is where it gets even weirder for KCorp, because to be honest, I was so convinced that this Jax was top the entire draft. But then when I was watching the game, this is actually Jax jungle. So I thought this was Gragas into Xin, which I was like, it's all right. There's not much you can do, but Gragas is a decent matchup into Xin, right? I would imagine it's a neutralizing thing. And then they pick Cassante, which is like technically a blindable top laner, but they used it on R5. So on paper, seeing the Jax into Cassante, I'm like, that's pretty good. And then you can use the Gragas and get any objective you want on the map, right? There's probably other junglers that could have done the job too. Like I think Trundle would have been excellent here. And then you just play through all your lanes, and then your main job is to just facilitate. And you shit on the Xin Zhao. And then you could just get everything. You can get grubs, you can get all the dragons. He's a perfect champion to counter Xin Zhao here, and he also is able to have a lot of agency and supplement what the KCorp comp want to do. Not only did they pick a worse champ into that, in my eyes, they also swapped Jax to jungle, which is, don't get me wrong, it's pretty strong in this patch. It's like, for some reason, it's at like 52 win rate, which is very abnormal for Jax. So, and on paper, Xin is an auto attack champion, Jax is an auto attack champion, and cucks every auto attack champion in the game. So like, you would think, yeah, but it's like, this is not my flex queue games, guys. Like, Jax jungle in the competitive stage is something that's extremely hard to pilot, just because the strengths of the champion in denying side lane and getting pressure and ensuring great conditions in a lot of matchups, you kind of get rid of that when you're a jungler, right? It's not the same anymore. So when you see Jax slotted in a jungle role, his role is really different. He's kind of just like, he's Trundle at home for all intents and purposes. Like, I think Trundle would probably be better in most scenarios here. With Titanic even. You know, there's like better build paths for him at this moment as well. So they kind of, not only did they throw away this free Cassante matchup for Jax, it's a bit of a fumble in my eyes that I see from KCorp here. Because now I would say Jax doesn't have as much free time to kind of walk around and do whatever KCorp needs to do on the map in order for them to transition their comp into the mid and late. And like, they just stunt themselves in the foot for no reason. They had a really good opener. So that's my idea behind this. And it's not like Fnatic's comp is bad by any means. It's just like they picked very reserved and very responsive. And I think whenever teams end up doing that a lot of the time and they don't command, they're playing to not lose, and they're not drafting to win per se. And I feel like there could have been more that KCorp could have taken from this, if you kind of see what I'm getting here. That was the idea behind this, and I thought this was a really interesting draft. I still think this draft was like somewhat KCorp favored, but like, this is something that's probably just a byproduct of what teams think is good at the moment and what they cooked. And this is kind of like the result of that. And we're still calibrating to the meta. They haven't had that much time to scrim and whatnot. But I think this was a really weird fumble by KCorp. And they had something good planned up, and maybe they can learn from this adaptation, because they do end up losing this game eventually. Likely because the Jax is not that useful even though he's fed. But I digress. This is the state of this draft. So just wanted to provide some insight into why KCorp would have done this, and maybe some feedback for next time. And just thought it was super interesting to point out. So hopefully this was useful to you guys, and I'll catch you next one. See ya.